Conversations, The Journey. My name is Ellis Rice, and I'll be your host for today. Today we're going to introduce a new version of our show, which we will be calling At the Seat of Our Elders. A tremendous amount of wisdom has been amassed in the minds of our elders. Some of them are willing to share it with us, the community. So we will allow them in their own way and in their own words to present their stories and their perspectives on life as they have seen it over the years. Today's guest will be Yusef Sudah. He's an author of the book, I Died and Came to Earth. He's also the founder and the executive director of the Sons Foundation, which is a mentoring program for fathers and sons. Today's show will be an excerpt from a longer conversation. To see the entire conversation, please go to bluesoulproductions.com. Thank you. Please let us welcome Yusef Sudah. But please tell us the name of the book. And
the book again is called I Died and Came to Earth. It has to do with the idea that life is a cyclic process. It's not a terminal process. It's not linear. Wherever there's a beginning, there's an end. Wherever there's an end, there's another beginning. The nature of the universe is set up in cycles. It is spiral. It is not circular. It is not linear. It doesn't come to an end. It flows. Life is a flowing process. Your relationships with people should be a flowing process. If it is full of happiness and joy, it is likely to be filled with flow and activity and beginnings and closings and new beginnings. So I Died and Came to Earth is about pre-birth. It discusses that. It talks about post-birth. It talks about post-birth as a human being, what it means and what it doesn't mean. In my particular case, I talk about my life. I talked about the hand-me-down gifts that I received, you see. I talked about the missing instruction that I was giving from instructors who want to teach me about the Greek. But looking in my face, I'm sure I don't look Greek and I don't look Roman, but that's what I would learn. And those are the kinds of things I went to an elementary school that was born out of a Jewish person who was a Zionist. Nothing is wrong with Jewish people being Jewish people. They're trying to live their lives, but their lives are not our lives. And by virtue of that, for us to try to replicate their lives would only cause us pain, suffering, agony, insanity, and malcontent. And that is what we experienced. You take African people here, we are African people. We may or may not know what area of the continent we come from, but that doesn't stop us from being who we are. That's important. And it's not sufficient for us to believe that we are like a Clarence Thomas or that somehow we are Americans. Well, to be an American, in fact, is to be a thief and a dishonorable human being. Why? Because it's theft. Now, lastly, I'll say as an example, if you and I were going somewhere and I say, brother, I want you to drop me off right here and I'm gonna run into the store. And I come back and we can go. You say, okay, I'll wait for you. But I come back and I say, well, Brother Ellis, I just robbed the store. Step on it. Now, if you do, I just made you an accomplice after the fact. Right?
Right.
If, same scenario, I say to you, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to stop here, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to rob this place, wait for me. And you wait for me, I then made you an accomplice before the fact, right? Mm-hmm. Point of fact. That ain't gonna change. That scenario won't change. True? How do we suggest that we were stolen from home? Which means if we were stolen, it was against our will. But we're gonna jump into the car and say, I want part of the goodies that you just took. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, I deserve part of the stuff that you just stole from these people who used to live here until you chased them away. And then somehow we say, well, we ought to have the right to vote for the stuff that we stole also. That's insane. And that doesn't change. That doesn't change simply because Martin had something to say or Malcolm had something to say about it. That doesn't change. That's buying into the insanity as if somehow we are privileged to have some part of the thing that we know that has been stolen. And we do know, because we celebrate things like Thanksgiving, George Washington's birthday. We know.
Yeah.
You understand? And if we as parents are not teaching our children ethics and responsibility and accountability in that regard, then we are not giving them the information. And can they trust our judgment if we're telling them improperly and incorrectly? Yes, sir. I just thought about the idea that we should be much more consciously aware not to degrade our understanding of God in the manner that we do every Sunday. Okay. God logically as an idea is really what it is. Nobody's seeing God and nobody's going to see God. We know that there was a time when the goddess was a much more important idea than was the God. Because it also says the goddess by definition has to be female. Well, that's attached to agenda. The God has to be male, which is attached to agenda. Well, that means that if that's the case, then God as a male has to have genitalia of a male. That also has to be true of the female. That's somewhat degrading if one looks at it from a perception of an entity that ranks above and beyond human attributes. If your God is jealous, that's a rather insane quality to attribute to a God, because if you do that, then that means that your God gets angry. And if that's true, then that means your God doesn't understand something. And if that's true, then that means your God doesn't have the quality of understanding that you're attributing to God, because anything that gets jealous is obviously somewhat foolish and blindsided. It's not hard. Okay. So we have to be more respectful of the something that we say we believe. And if we do that, then we can take a greater responsibility for our behavior and not attribute it to something outside of us, but take responsibility for embracing it. If I have a problem with you, I should come to you. I shouldn't go to someone else to talk to someone else about you. I shouldn't do that. Because the honor between you and I as two men has to be born out of the idea that we will correct our misunderstanding. If there's something I don't know, I ask you. What is it about me that you say, okay, you tell me. You just tell me I don't like you. Well, it's okay. It's okay not to like me. You understand? Now, if we want to engage in it more, I may be a little more engaged. Say, well, what did I do? What is it that I am doing that's causing you to feel what you're feeling? You know? And you might say, well, you remind me of my chicken. That could happen. You know, I mean, something as absurd and as ridiculous as that. Okay, well, I don't eat chicken, so what does that got to do with it? You understand what I'm saying? In essence, somehow we can get to the heart of it if, in fact, we're willing to take a responsibility to dig at it and find that's something that's missing. If that's true, then we can make the correction. You see?
But even in this process right here,
yes,
I experienced the world because I was reared, as I said, at the feet of my elders. In a time, I was born in 1957.
yes,
We didn't get a television in my house until my little sister was old enough to watch television.
right,
So a lot of my learning came from just simply talking
yes,
to people and listening to the stories and having them instruct me as to what things were. As you mentioned, we have these computers that we carry around now by the name of phones. We're so preoccupied. I know young people who don't even have the ability
right.
to have a conversation.
That's correct.
Much less work out a miscommunication based on a misunderstanding, because they don't have words. They don't have the wherewithal.
Yeah.
And it's not important. It appears not to be important for a great many people nowadays. And you go to the dinner table, nobody wants to sit there and just you're bringing your phones to the dinner table.
Right.
I can go down the list of,
exactly.
of things of how we can avoid communicating with each other
That's
directly. Correct. And when I was growing up, because of my family structure, I have absolutely no memory of actually sitting at a dinner table with all of my family. Now, part of it was financial circumstance. We didn't have a room. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a table big enough for all 5 or 6 or 7 of us, whoever was there at the time, to sit there. So as I grew into my adulthood and had a family structure, I've always wanted that. I value that.
Right.
Let's sit down and have a meal together and turn off the television, to turn off the phones, whatever, so that if we decide between eating some good food,
right,
to say something to each other, the opportunity is there.
Right.
But it's almost like pulling teeth.
Well, we've done something that's technology's improved, but humans haven't. Mm. You follow me? Mm. Going to a restaurant 30 years ago, 40 years ago, was not a popular undertaking because there weren't a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody cooked at home. I mean, imagine living in the rural area of any place, not necessarily the South, but the rural area. You're outside of Chicago. When you're outside of Chicago, you're in the South. Let me put it that way.
Well, I tend to think of the Mason-Dixon line starting at the Canadian border.
Thank you. You get my point. You understand? Now, if you get that, then people function according to the availability of what they had in order to live. So the reason for the dinner table was because it was a place by which people could come, by which food was served, because mom or grandmom or whomever had prepared all the food there for that moment in time. So there was breakfast, everybody ate breakfast. There was lunch, everybody ate lunch. If you worked in the field because you were a worker or a laborer, even if you weren't on a plantation, even the farmer had to have a place by which he had to go and have lunch. And the wife prepared that lunch and she prepared dinner. So she's doing this all day long. Now, my grandmother had a wooden fired stove, not gas. Not electric, wood-fired. That meant that she had to know how to manage this iron stove with wood and cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everybody. And she was doing that all day. Mm-hmm. Okay? The dinner table allowed everybody to come in, not just sit and eat, but they could debrief each other, tell each other how the day was, how it wasn't. What'd you do today? You got homework? Yeah, I got homework. Did you do it? No, I haven't done it yet. Why not? What do you need? You understand? That put the family back in communications with each other. Now, the technology has improved in such a way that if you want a fish sandwich, you can go get one from someplace. Because most people don't know how to select fish anymore for it to be cooked at home. Mm. They don't know the different kinds of fish to prepare. Right. They don't. A lot of the garbage fish that you want to buy now at a store is just that. You cannot buy snapper. You cannot buy perch. You cannot. Guess it isn't there. Why? Because the technology has destroyed the water such that it doesn't grow the animals in the ponds anymore for you to fish and eat them because the water is that bad. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's technological improvement, but the insanity is heightened. And we're not seeing that. I tell people a fish knows nothing about water. Fish doesn't know anything about water. Not one thing. How could the fish not know anything about it? Think about it. It's present, but the fish doesn't see it. Example, you obviously know nothing about air. Because you keep polluting it, but you have to have it. You don't see it, but it's there. True. And you do what with it? You fill it with smoke, pollutants, other kinds of stuff. But you can't live without it no more than the fish can live without water. But it's there, but you don't see it. That's what's missing. So there's a lot of things present in our lives that we don't see. Why? Because we're not paying attention. Our interaction as families is only crystallized if we put those things there to make the family of interest. And the sons will change on the basis of what the father does and doesn't do if the father puts himself there with the mother. And the mother understands, okay, when it comes to the boys, I'm going to leave you alone. I will not interfere. You must understand, no means what? No. No means no. Don't interfere. You can't raise men. You can't. I didn't say you couldn't have babies. I said you can't raise men. You can't. Well, I think my mother did a great job and my father was gone. Well, let's find out why your father was gone. And let's see how great of a job that mom actually did. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's incomplete. It isn't complementary. You understand? That's the difference. Why? Because males and females have to complement the relationship, not do something in opposition to it. How can you say that I love my wife, but she don't trust me? What the hell is that? What kind of relationship are you going to have if in fact you can't trust your mate? Because if the money becomes far more important than your mate, you ain't got a mate. You got a person that produces what you want them to produce, when you want to produce it, how and how much of it you want. Life is a struggle, it is, but you must manage the struggle in order to make it wholesome. That makes the difference. Okay? And we become the examples for our sons and our daughters. We want our daughters to marry men like us, but we have to be that example in order for them to aspire to do that. The same thing is true. You want your son to marry a person like his mother. Why? Because she is a example of ethics, integrity, honor, a sense of responsibility, and accountability. Not betrayal and nonsense and argumentation. That's the difference. And all of that amounts to the quality of understanding that we can engender by making sure that the unit called the family actually functions. Because fathers have to wait. I have 9 sons, as I said, right? Look. Let's assume that everything's perfect in my life. Okay? I've had a job all my life. From the day my son was born and before. My household is fine. I got cash in the bank. I got all the stuff I need. When my son is born, the first person he's going to know is who? His mom.
Yeah.
First person. Who's going to teach him all day long? Mom. Who's going to be going all day long to work? Moi.
Okay.
Right? From 0 to 15, 16 years old, the last person I'm going to know and the last person who's going to know me is my son. Why? I'm gone. Most of the time, aren't I? Because if I get up 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, get there by 8, I'm going 8 hours, I come back home, that's another 2 hours. When I come home, I'm going to sit down and eat. I ain't got time to play because I got to go where? To work the next day. How long is that going to go on? That's going to go to 15 to 16, 18 years of his life. And that's everybody. Who will I get to know? I've got to wait until my sons and daughters are old enough as human beings to say, Dad, I need to talk to you. Once that's true, I know somebody's home. Until that's true, I just got a person that I know I've been feeding for 15, 16 years. And you say, oh yeah, that's your dad. Oh yeah, is that dad? Yeah, that's dad. Well, don't stir it now. He needs to get some rest. Mom said, don't bother. Yeah, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I just need to get some rest. You understand? That's the activity that goes on in a wholesome house.
So you take this similar scenario. What about the child who's been? Okay, I remember when we was kids, and when we first got television, it was a show called Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
Came on television because we didn't have, it was, and I'm looking at these kids on television. They got their own room. You know, mom is at home. Now my mother was generally there, and my father was too actually. So I didn't have that scenario. But my parents were the kind like okay, with these kids, they had clean clothes all the time. They had a nice whatever kind of house that they had. My house didn't resemble none of that. So we was looking at a picture that didn't resemble my life at all.
We lived in the same house then.
Okay. So when I became started to pursue art, And my brother Saint got me started. He put me on stage. He always had a band.
Yeah.
And he would have stick me on stage, have me singing Otis Redding tunes, On the Dock of the Bay.
Right.
Songs like that. And I'm singing. I never been to San Francisco, never even left St. Louis. So I don't know about no San Francisco Bay, but the songs sound good.
Right.
But my parents were older. My father was born in 1900.
Wow.
And he was 57 when I came along.
Wow.
And my mother was born in 23. So he was 20 something when they first, because I think the son that they have together was born in 44. My brother John.
Right.
So by the time I get old enough to go do stuff, they ain't had no parts of it. It's like you go to school, they teach you the basics. You go to school, I'm not coming to go see no performance, no basketball game. When you graduate, I'll be there.
Right.
And that's just the way it was. And probably not just for me, but for many parents.
No, it had to be.
But you see young people nowadays, they got these parents, helicopter parents, I think they call them. Every rehearsal, every parent standing outside the dance class looking at them. Parents are all in the teachers, but not even the teachers, but because I did cultural arts programming for a lot of years. So you see these parents. And these kids will lose their mind if their parent isn't at every little thing that they do. And that causes a lot of resentment. So these kids are running around mad because their parents are actually like living there, providing for the life for them.
Right.
And not having the understanding that, no, it's not normal. Your parents need to be, at least your father or whoever, and we don't get into a broken household thing at this moment.
Right.
That's a separate structure. But just, as you said, the communication, the understanding that I can't resent my parents because they fed me, they clothed me. I didn't even know what hunger was until a few years ago when I had a naturopath tell me I was allergic to wheat.
Right.
And I changed that from my diet. It's like, so my body flushed out enough for me to feel hunger.
Right.
Never knew what it was. Like, people would talk about it.
Right.
So when we talk about communication between children and their parents, and how a lot of us, and the reason I mentioned Leave It to Beaver, a lot of these people are learning how to react with their grown people through television. The little brat kid that's always a little smart aleck and never get beat. It's like, ooh, let me say something like that to one of my parents. It's like, you don't get up from that. And they still standing?
Right.
Oh, no.
Well,
speak on that.
Life requires participation. Now, it is not a laid out plan of activity. It doesn't have structure except that it comes from the social and cultural interaction of the group that you're a part of. Important. We have two sets of living encyclopedias. Two sets. They're called grandparents. Now, what were their mistakes? Becoming parents.
Okay.
Got that? Who did they learn from? They each had two sets of encyclopedias called grandparents. Not parents. I said grandparents. Because your parents can't tell you things that your grandparents can tell you about your parents.
Okay.
Get that? Why is that important? Many things do not lend itself to explanation, my brother. The things that grandparents can tell you, and aged parents can tell you is different than that which will come to you from a parent who's 20 versus one who's now 60. You get it? Okay. That instruction has to do with experience. That instruction has to do with what it meant to have to learn first and learn what not to say later. You see? Is it comfortable? No. Is it likely to be uncomfortable? Yes. Why? Because you don't know what you don't know. Okay? To participate in the life of your child is very important to the child. It's also important to you. But the question is, given the circumstances of your life, can you create the time? Like your parents wasn't able to create the time. Why? They're too busy trying to make sure you could eat and breathe and there was a place to live, especially given the circumstances of life at the time. 1900 is not an easy time for the availability of life and living for a man that has children with a wife who's 23 years his junior. You understand what I'm saying? What does he know? What does he really know? Nothing. Where is his father's father to teach him what he needs to know so that he could learn from his father's father enough? When you destroy the nucleus of the family as the African family has been dismantled, destroyed, and passed on generational insanity, it's just like you don't eat wheat. Well, that totally discounts the possibility that you eat pork chops and pig. You understand me? Okay. But if that was the something that your grandparents or great-grandparents was raised on in order to survive, they did it. Not because it was the most wholesome thing to do, but because they had no way to make a choice other than that, because they're trying to get away from where they are. We tend to want to push that as, no, we can't push that actuality aside. That's not a comfortable reality. It's not. The technology has improved, as I said. I've watched in the course of my lifetime party lines versus I'm walking around with this. Okay? I can call you sitting here. Call my wife sitting here. Call my son sitting, he's 2,000 miles away. Okay, has life improved? Conveniences have, but not life. The quality of reasoning on the part of human beings has not improved, but this has. Because the same level of stupidity that existed 50 years ago is the same level of stupidity come across this phone, depending upon who calls me or who I call. Which means what? Has the level of improved understanding improved? Nah. You understand? If that's true, then that means there hasn't been any growth in humanity. We're stuck in a place we have no business in, but we're here. Now the question is, what do? We say, well, is it difficult? One, we have to recognize that and most importantly, we have no business here. But the business we have here, we have to do it in order to remain surviving and functioning while we are here. We have to. But we don't neglect who we are by trying to become something that we are not. You see what I'm saying? But in order to hold on to that, I've got to teach that to me first. Okay? Because if I can't keep my word to myself, I can't keep it if I give it to you. Fair?
Fair.
My integrity must matter to me.
There was a time, I know my father drilled into me, your word is your bond.
Thank you.
And he says, you can run out of money, but when your word is no good, you have nothing to work
If you cannot hold on to that which bonds you to you, you're done. You're done. And if you have a price, someone would be willing to pay it to control you. You get me? If I can buy you, you're done. Doesn't matter. I've got to be able to keep my word to myself. That's important. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't have a price. My honor and my integrity doesn't have a price. My ethics doesn't have a price. My sense of accountability and responsibility doesn't have a price. You're not going to get me to sell my friendship, my love, my care for my family or my friends. If I've given my word, I'm going to keep my word. What's the price that I can pay? Maybe with the only thing I got. What's that? I ain't going to stay anyway. Can't. Fair? Am I willing to compromise that? No. Okay? So I've never drank. I've never taken drugs. I've never smoked. Okay? I've never done any of these things. And people say, well, how did you manage to get 77 years old and not do those things? Just by doing what? not doing them.
Well, I can't claim that same neighborhood myself, but
You get my point? You see what I'm saying?
yeah, but
Okay.
I get it.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It isn't sometimes what you do, it's what you don't do. Because that gives you an assurance of you. And when that's true, if you can't do that with people, then don't be with people that do it. Just don't. Silence is very loud, my brother. Okay, you get my point?
Yeah.
Yes. Why is that important? If we don't rebuild the family by assuring the man that he can become a man just simply because he is a male does not make him a man, it makes him a male. But he must learn to become the man. What does that involve? Ethics, integrity, honor, responsibility, and accountability. If he can keep those 5 things on track with himself, life will be easier. Don't say it'll be easy, but it'll be easier than if he doesn't have that. And he then can make decisions that's consistent with the objectives that he has in mind. Is he going to bump into other people? Of course he is. Why? Because they're on the planet with you. You can't run across the street on a 5-lane highway with everybody coming at 70 miles an hour and expect to get across safely. Can't do that. Not a good idea to try. You hear what I'm saying?
Right.
You're going to bump into other things along the road of being alive. But you got to pay attention so you don't get hit. You don't get destroyed. You see what I mean? Are there any guarantees? No. Did you come here? Yes. Is there any guarantee you're going to stay? No. You have any idea when you're going to leave? No. But you know one thing is true. You're going to leave. That's what the book's about.
Great.
You can't stay. But you got to know you can't stay. And because you got here, you got to do what's necessary in order to pay attention. And give attention to those things that require paying attention to. What is that? Your own sense of worth to you. Not selfishly. You have a responsibility to be accountable to you, to the people around you, the people you care about. Is that going to be tough? It's going to be a lot easier than it would be if you do the opposite.
I'm a particular fan of language and the specificity of words. And I'm going to throw something at you because I've seen an evolution of how it has changed even in my lifetime. The word respect.
Yes.
And I mentioned because of what you just said. Man, I was watching a show on television last night. Samuel L. Jackson.
Jackson, yes.
The thing he's doing Ptolemy.
Ptolemy, great. Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, but there's this one of these episodes. He's talking to his nephew.
Yes.
And he calls him a boy.
Yes.
And the kid, they're like, "Well, I'm a man." It's like it's obvious. It's nothing about this young person who was a man yet.
Right.
But yet we strive for that language.
Right.
We strive for that language. But then, in those same contexts, we as a community, we tend to throw the word respect for the least little thing. We can become disrespected by the merest infraction or perception of an infraction towards us. And what's your take on how has that evolved?
We don't understand the meaning of the word. Okay. Repair means to pair again. Fair?
Okay. Yes.
Got it? Okay. If I repair my shoes, that means obviously something has unpaired them, so I need to go get it in. Fix it. Repair again. Okay. Spec by definition means to see. That's all it means. These were called, at one point they were called spectacles.
Okay.
Right? They're called spectacles. Why? Because I could see better with them if I had them. So the science of handling glass, right? Shaving it, carving it, fixing it optically would give me the ability, if I was myopic or biopic, I could have a way of correcting my vision with spectacles. Okay, and that's what they're called, spectacles. Well, respect means to see again. Got it? But to see it again in a way that you didn't see it before. It's not just looking, but it's to see it in a way that requires a kind of deference and appreciation and honoring of the something that you're engaged with. You respect your father. Why? You see your father as you see him different from anybody else. And he deserves that vision coming from you to see him in that way. So you never go to him in a manner that you would your friend or an enemy, okay, or an adversary, because he holds a particular vision in your mind as to what he represents as a part of your character and as a part of his character. Why? He reflects that character by what he gives you back. You see what I'm saying? So if you respect the person who's in charge, that means you look at him as the in charge person in a way that you couldn't look at anyone else in a similar fashion. Why? Because they do not occupy that level of integrity. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you don't understand the word, then the word can't have meaning. Why? Because you're not giving definition to the term to the people that you want to see you in the manner that you want them to see you. You see? Now, you can enforce respect through the process of force, right? Power, okay? Gun, sword, kingdom, you know, you understand? You can enforce it. But enforced respect is just that. It's enforced respect. It doesn't have anything to do with honor or integrity.
Well,
it has something to do.
More so be fear.
There you go. That's different.
Fear,
yes.
Based on the
so
power
you've
imbalance.
seen the movies where a guy says, which would you prefer to be liked or respected, or feared or respected? You tell you feared. You tell you feared because he can enforce fear. With what? Weaponry, potential of murder, assassination, armies. You see what I'm saying? You can enforce fear. But that isn't respect. That's fear. If you confuse the two, now you're missing it. A father doesn't want his son to be afraid of him. God does not want human beings to be afraid. If you're a God-fearing person, you're insane. I'll say that to anybody. Why? Because that's true. You have no reason to fear the most sane, logical entity and gracious entity perceptively in the universe. Why would you fear that? That should be your greatest ally, not something that you fear. You shouldn't be a God-fearing person. That's insane.
So that would imply that a lot of...
That implies that a lot of churches, a lot of religious entities gives you an understanding in and of itself that's fallacious and generates the opposite of the something that it says it wants to do. You don't burn women at the stake. Okay? You do not do that. You don't do that. If you're doing that, we're saying that you are crazy because your action is that of a madman. Okay? If you are the Son of God, God's I nor you would kill our children. We wouldn't do it. The essence of our person as fathers, as the genesis, as the lifeblood of our children, we wouldn't do it. In the book, I Died and Came to Earth talks about pre-birth. Why? Because everyone chose to be here. Why? Because everyone that understands the biological process knows that there is one possibility out of 800,000 to 1 billion possibilities in the fallopian tube of a female. That's a sperm. Only one of those are chosen. I'm talking to one of them right now. That's pure choice. That isn't accident. That's choice. You chose to fertilize that egg and give the complete complement so that I could be talking to this brother here. That's a choice. That's selecting and making the choice. That isn't some oops. No, that's a... Because none of the other billion did so. No matter how close they were swimming or interacting, they did not choose to become who you are. Or I'd be talking to somebody else here entirely. Now, that's pre-birth. 9 months of birth and gestation means that you have become familiar with what that body is providing you: life, liberty, happiness, joy, food, comfort. That's what you're doing. Post-born, you're here. Then we get here. What are we doing? There's something I call a lifeline. The playing field of life is purely clear. It is destined. It isn't predestined. It's as clean as this floor. Everything that's on this floor, you put it here. Everything. You cannot walk from where I am right straight to there because you got tables and chairs there, right?
Right.
You put them there.
Right.
Okay, so therefore I've got to interact with what you put there. My destiny, my destination is determined by what I see and walk around. Why? Because you put it there. You understand? I cannot have a destination that interferes or ignores what you did. Neither can you. When you make a decision, you put something there. The decisions that you make determine whether or not the something that you want to happen happens in the manner that you want it to happen, and that's what you might call your destiny. But who put it there? The woman you chose, the children that you have, the people you interact, the people that you allow in this house. Because not everybody comes in this house.
True.
You understand? Okay, you are giving destination to those. When you say to me, brother, here's my address, you're telling me where you are, and you also told me what time I could get in the door. That determines my destination for that day. That determines my destiny for that day. I am where I am today because I agreed with what you decided, and that decision and my decision gives you the opportunity for you and I to have this discussion that we have as two men who made a pre-decision at an earlier time in our life, and our paths have crossed twice in this location. And I'm just discovering this is the second time I've been here. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay. Now, how much of that is true of your life? All of it. That playing field is there for you. Why? You and I both know if we come, we got to go. Nobody stays.
So with that,
Yes.
because we're just starting to get to the tip of the iceberg here. I think a lot about education.
Yes.
Not in the traditional form of education, but I in terms of what really becomes the application in real life.
Yes.
The things that we learn, the things that we acquire, and how we can implement them to move forward as people and as success.
Yes.
And from what I'm grasping from what you're saying is that there are choices. All of it becomes the choices that you make as an individual. I won't even dare to say conscious or unconscious because they are real choices that have an immediate effect in your life. From this dialogue, what can we do to expand that? Because going back to the little incident about respect, so many times I heard younger people in particular get all flustered because they felt someone disrespected them. And they're literally like, wait, that don't even rise to the level of what the incident that I just witnessed or you just described to me. Doesn't even rise to the level of anything we can begin to talk about respect. And I like your breakdown on this. Like, it makes perfect sense. Once somebody breaks it down, like I said earlier, make it plain. So as men, as black men, how do we begin to create systems to sharing plain information so that we can relate to our communities in a more concise way to help these younger brothers and younger sisters?
We got it asked backward.
Okay.
Now here's what I mean. I wrote this book, it's called Full Spectrum Dominance.
Can you kind of turn it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Full Spectrum Dominance. Now, it doesn't have any great significance other than the fact that it also says, underneath it, totalitarian democracy in a new world order.
Okay.
Got it? The last thing that African people have seen on this planet, and anybody on this planet, is democracy. We haven't seen it. And certainly as African people, we've never experienced it.
Mm.
Okay? Now, how do we buy into something? Like a guy rising after 3 days, 7 days being dead. It's just as senseless as any. Okay? How do we reconcile the fact that a guy in a red suit with reindeers is going to be born on the same day a guy in the Middle East, right? Okay? And on the same day, we're going to have two different contradictory environments of which the activity is going to be administered on the behalf of the guy who rose after 3 days by a guy in a red suit with reindeers, and there's no word for snow in the Middle East.
Right.
Now, if we can believe that, the field is wide open. How does African people believe that somehow the founding bandits of this nation who robbed, killed, pilfered, and murdered everybody here, and then brought us here to do something that they didn't want to do, and somehow we then walk around believing that this is the greatest country on the planet? I say two things. The mind can think, right? But the mind also can be used. Okay? And that's what has happened to us. We're not understanding the actuality. We have a reality, but we're not understanding the actuality.
Okay.
There's a difference. Okay? Now, as simple as this. As I sit here, I see these tables a certain way. As you sit there, you see the same tables, but differently. We see the same objects, but we do not see the same objects the same way. You get it?
Okay.
So you have a reality and I have a reality, but those realities are not the same. Because unless we can look at everything simultaneously, we will not get the actuality of what we're watching or what we're seeing. You get my point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why is that important? Because we have the capability of creating a reality that's more agreeable with what we would like to have accepted by us. Mm-hmm. We enjoy those things that we most like. We put energy in those things that we most enjoy, right? Mm-hmm. Therefore, we know that the one thing that we need is air to live, but we buy cigarettes as if somehow they contribute to our life, when nothing is further from the truth. How long can we live without air? Then why would we pile our lungs with smoke?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? How is it that somehow the planet's been savory for hundreds of thousands of years, but now the air has become so polluted that people are dying from emphysema, and people are dying because the air is so bad that you have to get oxygen purely corrected in order to breathe properly? That's an insanity. Because the reality is it's okay to smoke, but in actuality, it's not. You see? Why does that play a part? Because it's more useful in the minds of young people to have agreement and be accepted rather than understand the work that's necessary to become acceptable through behavior. So, and who should teach them that? If we do not repair the family, it is the family that matters, not the individuals within the family that matters. You understand? That doesn't discard the value of the individuals, but it says unless you have a family, you will not have any individuals. The family must become the instrument by which economy is bred and function. Why? Because the definition of the word economy means the survival of the family. That's what it means. If the individuals within the family as a nucleus are interacting, cooperating, and doing the complementary things as father the son, son the father, mother the daughter, daughter the father, father to daughter, daughter to father. And that unit functioning as a unit, everyone in the family will be fine. Every individual within the family will be fine. You can't divide them out. Why? Because they are a unit that makes the entire community, as a community, functions. Why? Because they commune together. They communicate together. They interact. They act like your body acts. If one part of your body becomes ill, we're going to take you to the hospital. It's going to happen. Because once the body gets out of communication, something goes awry. It is the unit that matters. Not the individual kneecaps, elbows, fingernails, and so on. The same thing is true. Got to repair the family.
Bringing it back to something that you said earlier.
Yes.
Which was, he who controls the language.
That's correct.
Controls.
That's right.
So the language then that we have consumed as a people, which is whether it's the language of religion, whether it's the language of disrespect, or just having words that does not affirm our greatness.
That's correct.
And
it does the opposite.
So, and you're saying now then really the responsibility of controlling or disseminating that language has to originate from the family in order for it to then have us grow collectively.
Capitalism, communism are two ideas concerning the management of an economy by virtue of distribution through the process of a government. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. Neither one of them have anything to do with communalism.
Right.
Got that? How is it that the planet could manage to feed everybody on it for thousands of years, but now people are throwing food in the ocean to keep the prices of food high simply because they don't want to distribute the food? That's because you've inserted insanity. Governments don't know how to do one thing: govern. This country is in trouble simply because it has allowed one idiot within present time to indicate how idiotic the government actually has worked for now 200 plus years. And if one idiot can cause that much confusion within a structure to this degree that they're talking about his trying to overthrow the government now for 2 years, and they do not have a way to expediently handle this person, even though we can't get a child adjudicated from a police officer killing him accidentally. You see, that's insane. I'm just saying to you, it doesn't require a lot of understanding. It requires understanding and looking at the understanding and holding the understanding as value and not discarding it because you can stand under what you know. Don't be fooled by what people tell you. You got it?
Don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype. The mind can influence and the mind can be influenced. That's what we're missing. That is why I can sell you Santa Claus and tell you that Easter eggs comes out of bunnies and have you believe that and have you celebrate it. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. That is why the respect that's essential for us to understand, because we throw away understanding. What does it have to do with Yusef? It has to do with Yusef from the viewpoint that if we march through life with understanding the playing field of our lives are open, and what decisions we make will either have us do one or two things. We never failed. We either succeeded success or we succeeded failure. But what determines the success is where we put our intentions. You see what I'm saying? Anything you wanted to do, you did it.
That's true.
Anything. And you usually did it with nothing.
True.
You got the something that you wanted from the nothing that you decided to have happen. You put it there. And once you put it there, it would not allow you not to get it. If you found the woman that you didn't like, or you found the woman that you liked, but you later learned that you didn't like it because you shouldn't have chose that one, you still got it. And you're victimized by the decision that you made. And vice versa is true. You understand what I'm saying? So it has nothing to do with personage. It has something to do with where you put your intentions. So whatever your intentions are, you achieve it. That's the capability that you have.
This has been Conversations, The Journey. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back with more conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Right on.
Enjoyed it.